So, in the last video, I mean, welcome back. In the last video, I showed you how to create your first dispatcher robot. In other words, you read from an Excel data source, store it into a data table, right? And from there, use the bulk queue items to load it to Orchestrator. And we learned that if you enforce unique references, you might have some problems. So keep that simple at the level you are now, right? So I think it's important to mention that it is always, I mean, I said it in the last video, but I'll say it again. It is always better that the dispatcher, that is the robot that dispatches the items to the queue, is different from the robot that works the queue. Uh, so always remember that. So for that reason, I'm going to disable these first two activities, right? Because essentially they could be another robot entirely. So I'm going to disable these two activities, right? And shrink them by minimizing the content. And then I'm going to enable the one I disabled just before we started our last video. So I'm going to enable them. And the approach is going to be a little bit different. In the old series I made, I showed you how to load and work these items directly from the Excel sheet. We're not going to be doing that, right? So I'm going to scoot these two items out, assign variables to be entered. And of course, it's going to give me some errors. I'm basically going to remove everything from this for each row in data table. And I'm going to get some errors immediately I do that because everything basically depends on that, right? So, but not to panic. We'll fix it in a jiffy. All right, we'll fix it. So essentially, what I'm saying is we're going to get rid of this. We're going to disable this. I hope you can follow me quickly because there's a bit of work to do to get it back to a state where it's not showing any errors, right? So all of these things are going to be problems because, well, I guess technically maybe this was my bad. I'm going to undo everything I did just now and do it again. Okay, I'm going to do everything I did and do it again because there's a scope problem. So everything is here and I'm about to start now, right? So the first thing I want to do is the scope of these variables is limited to body. I want to increase them to the whole robot so they'll be visible anywhere. That's the first thing. I'm not sure why I didn't do that before, but it only takes a few moments to do it. All right, so now that I've done that, basically we want to empty this for each row in data table and disable it. Notice that it didn't take away all the errors though, but we'll talk about that later. So these are the 3 steps to do. And what I want to first do is disable this because I don't need it anymore. Where are you? Oh, still in there. So I want to put these. What the? I'm confused. What did I do wrong here? Just give me a minute. Let me undo. I think. Let me undo one more time. So I've moved these 2 items here, and the last thing I want to do is move everything inside this retry scope out. So I'm minimizing it first so I can see what I'm doing. And I'm going to put it right below complete web form so I don't get distracted. Sometimes I get distracted like a little kid sometimes, just lose focus in like seconds and something flashes through my mind. So I've got to pay attention. All right, so we continue basically moving everything out of the for each row into that table and putting it above and then disabling it. That's what we've done. Okay, please be patient. Don't lose focus. We're just starting. Why are we doing that? Because we are not loading the queue from the Excel sheets. So we're not going to use these to identify the items to process anymore. We're going to pick it up from Orchestrator, the cloud. See, I'm pointing to the cloud, like old people do. It's stored in the cloud. So pointing up. Right. So, but then the question is, how do we even get um, what is in the queue in the orchestrator or in the cloud, right? So the first thing we do is that we use an activity called get queue items. So we put that, I mean, we could put it inside get queue items. It takes a moment to load. Having some internet problems. Uh, Give me a minute. I think we're back. So yeah, when you drag in the get queue items activity, I mean, it should show you all your queues, right? That's if you are connected to the internet. It should show you all your queues in Orchestrator. So you pick the one that is relevant. Yeah, so as you pick the one that's relevant, which in our case is data for entry. Um, I would say it is important to click on properties and then make sure you select new. There are a number of things to consider um, in these properties, like how long do you want it to dry? Um, do you want a date range from this to this? What is the priority? You know, I don't know if that's relevant at this stage. More complicated cases will require you to adjust those. Uh, Sometimes you want to try failed items and things like that, abandoned items. But again, we're keeping it simple. We are just beginners. And then we are going to um, do one more thing. I want you to continue on error, and then I want you to name the output that's coming out Control and K, Q, UE items, right? Then enter. So get everything that is on this queue is basically what this command does, right? And then when you do that, what do you do with it? That's where we have a for each coming. I think I better search here. Again, you've got to be clicked on activities and then use the for each. And then you use the for each control. This for each, this one here. You drag it above this. And then what are we, for each queue item, we just get the queue items, get, I mean, I would say, come on, I hate it when it does that. Get current queue item, um, and then do some stuff with it. So this is where you now drag this stuff below in. This is where you now start configuring with this language will not work. Uh, that works for an Excel sheet or a data table that you pull directly from an Excel sheet, but it will not work for this. In this case, you use queue item. I think to keep it consistent. Let me do this. I'll call it queue item, right? So it understands that it's one of these, right? Then you have to label it like this: queue item dot. Oh, I should probably use open the expression editor so you see clearly. Queue item dot specific content. Then you put the column. I'm sorry, use proper brackets that you are talking about dot toString, right? This is the format of how you write it. So I'm going to open this. So for example, the first column has first name in it. So I'm basically saying that get anything that was here. Of course, at this time it's in the orchestrator queue, but it also has the same header. So, this will be the content. This will be the syntax, if you like, to get the same results as what was there before. So we're going to do the same thing for the rest, this is not going to work. I think that one was last name. You have to be very careful not to make typos because it's quite sensitive, right? Then the same thing for phone number. You'll notice that the error disappeared. So in this case, it's just phone. And the last one, I believe, so not first name, we're going to change to, it's just email, right? So when you do this, it understands that whatever is on that queue, so if for the first row, for example, assign whatever is on row one, the first, what is in column one is the first name, what is in column two is the last name, what's in column three is the phone number, what's in column four is the email address, right? So it gets that that's what you're trying to do. And of course, the objective is to complete this web form. Again, I'm not going to spend time building um, this, right? But there's one thing to do. For each queue item, you are going to have to get transaction item, right? So what we have just done here is assign the variable. We haven't actually said, okay, get the queue item. So that will be the next thing. So there's an action or activity called get queue items. I'm sorry, get transaction items, my bad. Get transaction items. I'm getting distracted again. We just use get queue items. Get transaction item. That's the one you, oh, have we used it before? And that's what you need for this. It's going to ask, oh, which queue? Data for entry. All right. Okay. In this get transaction item activity, the important thing is to just put queue item here. Oops, let me spell that right. So it understands. And then, of course, the filter strategy, just leave it as starts with this, really nothing much to do. I would only say put this above this. So the logic is that it gets for each item on the queue, on this queue, right? Data for entry. It basically understands that when I say first name, I'm referring to whatever is on the first name column. And I'm going to use that information to complete this web form. So we're going to try it now and see whether it works. I mean, we don't need this anymore, but I'm just going to close it out of habit. So hopefully, I haven't forgotten any steps in this process. It's been a long day for me. Feeling tired. I took a long drive recently, and I think I'm having like sort of if it's real drive lag. All right, so it's about to launch. Oh, it's not showing us. Okay, so I need to kind of open it up. So there you go. It's working fine. It's actually like on the last item on the list by now. I think that was the last item on the list, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah, it finished everything in 30 seconds. I think, try this on your own. If I look at where was it now? At the data here, I think, let me see now. Yemi or Lakunle was the last person. Yeah, so, wow, that was pretty fast. All right, so I want to, the last thing we want to do before we shut this down is we want to go to the queue and look and see whether the items were processed. So we say view transactions. and it says in progress, in progress, in progress. It means it worked everything. Notice everything was new. So there was one thing I didn't do, and that was to, um, when you finish, you have to actually um, set, I think it's called set transaction status, right? Transaction status. So it knows that you completed. I don't know why UiPath is like real, real complicated like that, but that's how it goes. Um, yeah, so set transaction status is the last thing you do. You put it at the end of the automation. And what that does is it basically marks what you have done as completed. So again, you say queue item, hmm, and then you mark it as successful. Okay? I don't know. I think we have a scope problem here. It needs to be inside this box here. So you've got to put uh, the car, I mean, the workspace you're currently working in, and then queue item, right? So I think the problem is that, this this is a scope problem. It must be within this for each, and it's not. So I would say no wonder that thing went so fast. Um, so what happened was I only processed the last one. So we're going to do it all again. But if I put it here, I would say queue item, and I should have no errors, right? So make sure it's within the for each, the scope of the for each, because that's the only place where we define this queue item. So, but what this does is that it marks the transaction that you're currently working on as successful. Okay. So I'm going to close this now. Yeah, I'm probably just, oh, did I do that? Oh, gosh, close all of this. Just, so you see what I'm doing now. Then I'm going to enable this because I have to enable these two things because I want to, I want to load the queue again and then work the items on the queue. So I'm going to, for the sake of practicing, I'm going to go back to my queues. I'm going to delete this queue completely. I think if it's remove, and then it's going to ask me to type in the name of the queue, and I say delete. I did that, right? Oh, it looks like there's a space. Delete data for entry. All right, so add queue very quickly. Add queue. I think my image here is disturbing that. Create a new queue. Paste. This time, make sure that there's no space here, and then just add. Okay. So we're going to run it again. Remember, I said disconnect the dispatcher. This is dispatcher, but I'm opening it up again because I have an empty queue. So I'm going to run it. And what's going to happen is that the first two steps are going to read the data, dispatch it to the queue, and then it's going to go ahead and process the data this one time. So I'm pressing play. Hmm. It says here it wasn't a good idea, like I said, to run the dispatcher before, I mean, the same bot as the executor. So it was basically what I would say happened is that there was nothing in the queue. It was too quick. Maybe I should have put a break between loading the queue and executing the items. Nevertheless, I'm going to go ahead and disable those first two actions, like I said, activities, and then try again. So now the dispatcher is out of it. It's just going to go to the queue. You notice that at this point, the transactions say new. status is new, but once it starts working them, um, it's going to be a different deal. So I'm going to open the browser. Ugh, don't know, maybe make this big. I hope that helps. So it's going to be quite slow. I mean, this is the slow one. So don't fall asleep on me now. But it's, as you can see, it's doing the work, right? So it submits them one after the other. It's very slow. But what is happening now is that it's working the queue from the orchestrator, not from the Excel sheets. And that's the objective of this class. Uh, the key thing to note is that one of the advantages of that is that as we are doing this now, I have to use my machine to do it. But with that capability, you can run this on any machine. It doesn't have to be my machine, and I can use my machine to do other things. So you can basically get like a cloud or virtual machine on another computer and just put this, just press play on the orchestrator for this automation, and this will get done regardless of which computer is on. But to do that, you have to publish this process to orchestrator first. Once you've done that, the cycle is complete. But what I'm showing you in this video is how to load or dispatch work items to a work queue and how to run them, right, from the work queue, right? So just at the risk of not, I mean, we start like 7 and I think we're out of time on this video. So I'm just going to pause this until it finishes and conclude, all right? But as you can see, it's working fine. All right, so the process is ended, and as you can see, it took about 2 minutes and 46 seconds. Not a long time, but we already wasted a lot of time. So I'm going to refresh this page, and what you will find is that everything says successful. Why is that? Because we use set transaction status to do that. And so now you have become a guru at loading the orchestrator queue, bulk loading the orchestrator queue, and working items from the queue. The syntax for it is as follows, and you basically insert the name of the column you're referencing here, and you'll be fine. So for this to run this from the orchestrator, which I might do another video of, we have to publish um, to orchestrator. All right, so I'm going to stop this video now, and I hope you enjoyed it and found it instructive. Thank you. See you next time.